It was midnight, and the control center was suffocatingly quiet. The dim, bluish glow from the monitors bathed the room, with the occasional blinking indicator lights like cold, distant stars in a dark sky. I sat at the console, feeling the silence slowly eating away at my sanity. The coffee on the desk had gone cold hours ago, and a faint burnt smell from the equipment lingered in the air. Then, without any warning, a sharp alarm pierced through the silence, and scarlet lights flooded across the screen. I jumped out of my seat, my heart hammering violently in my chest, suddenly struggling just to breathe. The words on the monitor stabbed at my eyes like cold fingers. Unauthorized launch sequence initiated. My mind went completely blank for a moment before plunging straight into panic. Somehow, the experimental rocket had begun the launch sequence without any indication or warning. My eyes quickly scanned the data, but froze on a name that sent ice through my veins: Alex. The screen mercilessly informed me that he was inside the capsule. All communication channels had been disabled, and the hatch was sealed shut. As the mission control director, I knew exactly what this meant. That sealed experimental rocket was about to ignite and lift off in mere minutes. I desperately tried to abort the launch, but the controls seemed possessed by some invisible force, refusing to respond to my frantic commands. The countdown flashed relentlessly on the screen in glaring red numbers, ticking downward second by second. It felt like a nightmare unfolding before me. I could only watch helplessly as the rocket engines roared to life, the vibrations rattling through the monitors and glass, reverberating into my chest. For a brief, chilling moment, the surveillance camera captured Alex's face. Pale and terrified, his wide eyes stared directly into the camera, as if looking through the screen straight at me. His expression was filled with despair and confusion, a gaze that seemed to drag my soul toward the same abyss he now faced. Then the screen flickered violently, and the feed abruptly went dead. The rocket shot upward like a fiery torch, disappearing quickly into the cold, dark sky, swallowed by the emptiness of space. I collapsed into my chair, feeling hollow, empty, and ice-cold inside. A massive wave of guilt and dread crashed over me. He won't survive 30 minutes. A quiet voice whispered in the back of my mind. But alongside it crept a strange, chilling sensation, one that made my skin crawl and seemed to whisper that this nightmare was far from over. 30 minutes passed, and I was still sitting in the control room, staring numbly at the steady, rhythmic green pulses of the life monitor. My skin crawled, prickling with dread that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up. By every known law of physics, Alex should have been dead by now. Yet the signal persisted, showing an impossible, bizarrely stable sign of life, as if mocking me with some twisted cosmic joke. I spent sleepless nights, watching helplessly as the capsule drifted aimlessly through dark orbit, emitting irregular signals every now and then, taunting me, he's still there. Still alive, My sleep became fragmented, haunted by strange dreams. I would always see Alex drifting alone in endless darkness, utterly hopeless. His eyes turned pitch black, his lips silently mouthing the same words over and over, words I could never quite make out. Exactly 1 month after the incident, the communication equipment abruptly activated itself at midnight, filling the control room with soft static. At first, I thought it was ordinary interference, but soon a chilling realization crept up my spine. Buried within that static was a quiet, inhuman whisper. It slithered slowly into my ears like damp fog, wrapping around the edges of my consciousness, impossible to shake off. I felt as if the voice was speaking from an infinite, black void, traveling an unimaginable distance with eerie patience, whispering incomprehensible messages directly into the control room. Beneath that static, I could hear Alex breathing, rapid, ragged, pained breaths. His breathing soon turned into faint, indistinct sobs, then morphed into a soft, unsettling laughter, muffled, insane, and finally fading back into silence. But the whispers never went away. They remained, patient, waiting for my reply, as though some unknown presence hid silently in the darkness, watching me closely. I desperately tried to shut down the equipment, pulling out cables and cutting power, but the voice continued to echo inside my head. I began to question if I had fallen into a hallucination, or perhaps the world itself was no longer the one I'd known. And the monitor's life signals continued blinking steadily, mockingly, hinting that even darker horrors were yet to be revealed. I slowly realized that this accident was far more sinister, more horrifying than it seemed, and I was helplessly sliding toward a dark, unknown abyss with no way to escape. Every night I sat alone in the empty control center, mechanically staring at the life monitor signals on the screen. My heart beat like a cold machine in my chest, steady, relentless, merciless. The rocket was still drifting silently in its dark orbit, a forgotten tombstone quietly registering life signs that simply shouldn't exist. Over and over, I played back the fragmented audio recordings transmitted from the ship. They had become increasingly strange and distorted, filled with warped sounds and deep, unsettling whispers, like murmurs rising from the depths of some dark abyss. Every time I listened, a chilling sensation seeped through me, as if invisible fingers were slowly tearing apart my soul, penetrating down to the bone. I began avoiding sleep altogether, because every time I closed my eyes, those horrible sounds invaded my dreams. I'd see myself floating helplessly in the infinite darkness of space, surrounded by countless pairs of pitch-black eyes, all silently watching me. Alex was always there, staring sadly and hopelessly from a distance. And behind him lay a deeper, darker void, where immense, silent forms lurked like enormous beasts hiding patiently in the shadows, silently observing our world. Then, finally, at exactly 3 o'clock one morning, the communication lights suddenly blinked to life, and the screen activated itself. Through suffocating static, Alex's voice strained painfully to break through. It sounded as if he were screaming with every ounce of strength left in his body, his words drenched in absolute terror and despair. I watched in horror as the signal waves on the comm device distorted even further, twisting his cries into senseless murmurs, as if some unknown force had begun to consume his mind. In the last few seconds of the recording, his voice turned cold, mechanical, almost inhuman, whispering repeatedly, "They're out there. They've always been out there." Those words pierced deep into my ears, echoing relentlessly in my mind, burrowing themselves permanently into my consciousness. I shuddered violently as I shut off the comm system, my gaze inadvertently drifting toward the corner of the control center. The darkness there seemed thicker and heavier than ever before, as if slowly creeping outward. I suddenly felt an overwhelming certainty, something invisible was watching me, its gaze colder and crueler than fear itself. From that moment on, I became truly afraid of the dark. Half a year had passed since the accident, and the government had long since sealed away every shred of information. The Mission Control Center had become a silent prison, trapping both my body and soul. Day after day, I sat alone in that sealed room, obsessively watching Alex's drifting orbit, even though I knew this endless observation was slowly devouring my sanity. Then one night, without warning, the communication equipment sprang back to life, the monitors flickering erratically, displaying distorted, nightmarish imagery. I held my breath, eyes locked onto the screen. Gradually, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, Alex. He floated in the middle of the capsule, curled up, his body trembling with violent spasms. His limbs twisted grotesquely, as if bound by invisible ropes. And outside the ship's porthole, faces began slowly surfacing from the void, countless pale, contorted faces pressed against the glass. Their eyes were pitch black, empty, like bottomless pits devoid of life yet radiating unspeakable malice. They watched Alex without expression, as though silently observing some unimaginable ritual. My entire body shook uncontrollably as my fingers stiffly reached for the screen, desperately trying to shut it down, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Then suddenly, Alex's trembling ceased. Slowly, he turned his head toward the camera. His face was drained of color, his eyes hollow, black voids. He stared directly into the lens, directly at me, and opened his lips slightly, whispering in a voice so chilling it froze my soul. Asterisk, they see you now. Asterisk. The communication abruptly cut off, the screen plunging into darkness once more, leaving the control room silent and still. I sat frozen, soaked in cold sweat, My heart seemingly stopped, my chest tightening painfully. At that moment, I felt an icy breath slowly creeping up my spine, as if something was silently approaching me from behind. Rigidly, I turned around, my gaze drifting toward the control room window. There, pressed firmly against the glass, was a pale, enormous face, wearing a grotesque, unsettling smile. Its eyes, two deep, black holes, stared straight at me without a sound. At the same moment, every monitor in the room flickered back to life. Countless pale, twisted faces began emerging on screen, hundreds of black eyes fixed relentlessly upon me. Their lips moved softly, murmuring indistinctly at first, then gradually becoming clearer, louder, merging into a unified, endless whisper.
"You are not alone. We have come for you."